When a house is empty, the family missing, and silence a way of life, the nights get chilly, the nights get lonely, and in the night, strong men break down to cry, for they are taking them away to the slaughterhouse.
So, hi everybody, welcome to another episode of Book Café Podcast. I'm your host, Omar Nizam, and my conversation partner for this episode is somebody who needs absolutely no introduction. But suffice to say, he is a man who wears many hats because he's not only an author, but he's also an academic scholar, a film producer, and a diplomat. And he has also been called, and I quote, the world's leading authority on contemporary Islam by the BBC, as well as the most influential living authority on contemporary Muslim societies by the Saudi Gazette. So I'm delighted to welcome to the show Professor Dr. Akbar Ahmed. Hi, Professor. Welcome to the show. It's great to connect with you.
Well, thank you so much, and thank you for that very warm introduction. It's a pleasure and an honor to be on this platform with you. So thank you for inviting me.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. The pleasure is all mine, sir. So, Professor Dr. Akbar Ahmed, we here at Book Café Podcast love to know about our authors just as much as we love to know about the book or the books that we're discussing. So, with your permission, I would love to start off by asking you a couple of questions about your early life. You were born in British India in Allahabad in 1943. Yes. And the partition of India and Pakistan took place in 1947. Can you tell us what was your experience as a child going through the partition of 1947 as well as your family's experience? Do please walk us through that.
Well, my father was a senior civil servant with the British Raj in the administration. And he was given a choice, as were all civil servants in India, to opt for one of the countries, Pakistan, or stay back in India and opt for India. And he opted for Pakistan because there was a tidal wave of emotions which was heightened when the killing and the violence began in India against the Muslims. So he opted, and he was lucky to be able to get some space in a train going from Delhi to Karachi, which was designated the capital of Pakistan. This all happening in 1947. So at the height of the riots and the killings, we went through the Punjab to Karachi. It's difficult to think of now, but a lot of the trains were massacred, the passengers were massacred, so that except for the engine driver, everyone was killed. And the idea was that the train would arrive like a ghost train as a lesson to the other side. So it was happening on both sides. Everyone was guilty. So the trains leaving Pakistan had dead Sikhs and Hindus arriving in Delhi with one engine driver, and the other way around, trains coming from Delhi with all the Muslim passengers slaughtered. So we were scheduled to be on a train which was leaving Delhi, and my mother, for some reason, refused to take that train. She had to buy provisions or whatever. So we took the next train. And because of that, we survived, because that previous train, which we should have taken, was completely decimated and slaughtered. And my father always said, it's a woman's intuition. You see, it's a woman's intuition. Always trust that. So somehow we survived. My earliest memory was of being in a train compartment. I remember the light, it was yellowish, because those train lights, if you were too young to remember any of this, but I don't think they had so much power in them. So they gave a ghostly kind of yellowish light, which was ghastly enough. But then my father, he's a very gentle, very amiable man, but from his posture, I saw that he was very tense. So he was telling us kids, don't make a noise, just keep quiet and get under the berths. And I said, why? And he said, you'll be hidden there, you'll be safe there. So I didn't understand why we'd be safe under the berth, because the berths, as you know, were completely exposed. But we went onto the berth, and he said, don't make a noise. So the train would go along and then stop at various stations. And there'd be people around the train knocking on the doors, and with obviously some bad intentions. So we were even more scared and apprehensive as to how this would all end, because there were terrible stories by that time of people being killed and slaughtered on both sides again. But somehow we made that journey. Now that left a terrible impression on me of a kind of communal madness that took over that entire region. Hindus, Muslims, Sikhs, everyone was involved in that. When we arrived in Karachi, my father was given a large official house on Victoria Street next to the Clifton Bridge, is a very well-known places. He was head of the Pakistan Railways in Karachi and doing a very important job because at that stage, refugees were coming by train. Remember, there's no airline then. And the army had begun to be moved. So he had to report to Mr. Jinnah, Qaid-e-Azam, every week to account for where these passengers were and when they were arriving. So we were given this big house. And why I remember it is that refugees coming from India, again, a whole range of refugees from Bihar, Bengal, Hyderabad, Bombay, arriving in Karachi would come with a little chit and they'd say, we're looking for the house of Salahuddin Saab, who was my father, and he'll look after us. So literally people would just come in the lawn. There were 2 tennis courts. Those lawns were full of refugees. He had set up tents for them. The corridors were full. So for the first 1 or 2 years, literally 30, 40 people would be living with us all the time. They'd always find a roof there. All this made an impression on my mind and in a sense became I think it gave me that emotional energy to reach out to people who are not like me, not of my community, to try to understand why there was so much animus and hatred between the communities. I've been literally teasing this question over most of my life. I look at the Muslim community and I say we have problems in India, we have problems in the Middle East, we have problems in Russia, China. Why is this? Number 2, what can we do about it to make relations better so that there's less pressure on ordinary Muslims? This is something that has connected me from the past and created some nightmares because even now, Omar, it's many, many decades ago. Even now I have very disturbing sleeps at night when I'm just suddenly dreaming of something half awake, half asleep. And I imagine I'm on one train and another train is going by and my family's on that train. And there's no connection because somehow they've left me and I can't find my way to the other train. And there's no way I can make the train because I see it passing by. And my cell phone is not working and there's no communication. And then I wake up. So I think obviously that's, I don't want to go in for any pop psychology, but obviously that whole trauma has continued to stay in my mind. Right. And it's important enough for me to then try to do something about it and not ignore it.
Indeed. Well, thank you for sharing that, sir. I cannot imagine how traumatic a time that must have been. But 1947 was unfortunately not the only traumatic event that you would experience in your life, sir. And I remember that just before we started, you did mention 1971 as well. And of course, that was the year that East Pakistan broke away and became Bangladesh. Where were you at the time? And can you tell us what your experiences were of 1971? Please walk us through.
Well, Omar, 71 was also a very traumatic time in a very different way, but also very traumatic. I was in what was then East Pakistan. The aim was of the central government, I think Ayub Khan had come up with this scheme that he would move the West Pakistani CSP officers to East Pakistan and vice versa. So, for example, I was in Mansehra, a lovely part of Pakistan, Assistant Commissioner, and I was moved to East Pakistan, and my batchmate, Shafi Sami, who went on to become, I think, the Foreign Secretary for Bangladesh, a very fine officer and a good friend of mine, he came to Mansehra and took over as Assistant Commissioner. So we arrived there, and an Assistant Commissioner, as you know, was called the SDM in Bengal, the Subdivisional Magistrate. So we had to deal with the magistracy, the executive, the revenue, a whole range of activity. But we were out in the field. We were, in fact, government in the field. So we were there to do a job, to provide service to people there, irrespective of whether they were Bengalis or Punjabis. And as the momentum began for the independence movement, and I was seeing it develop like a tidal wave, and I saw the lack of response of the central government, I realized that we would all eventually be in real trouble unless something was done about it. I was very lucky. I survived physically because of my batchmates. 4 batchmates were actually killed, 3 of them with their wives. Very brutally, they were really taken. The mobs arrived in their houses, took them out and shot them. And One of them was nailed against a tree, etc. So again, a very traumatic time.
Mm.
I was lucky because I was posted to Kishorganj, and my boss was Hassan Ahmed, who later became ambassador to the US, a very senior CSP officer, very fine officer, very fine officer. So anyway, back to 71. And as the momentum built up, my only aim was somehow to survive that because I knew that tidal wave was building up. And I was able to get my wife out. We are going into 71 now. And I was then in Dhaka. Then I had one of these useless jobs, governor's inspection team. It wasn't a very helpful job. I just sat there in a huge building in Dhaka when my friend, Major Sabir Kamal, walked into the office wearing his full uniform. He belonged to the Frontier Force. Again, a good friend of mine from the Aptabad days when I was assistant commissioner there. And he walked in and he pulled out his revolver. He was wearing his full uniform. He pulled out his revolver and he cocked the gun and he put it next to my temple like this. Came around the table, put it next to my temple. And I said, Sabir, have you gone crazy? Because that damn thing will go off and I'll be dead. And he said, write. So I pulled out a sheet of paper and I began to write. And he said, to the chief secretary, he said, I would require leave, indefinite leave, and I'm leaving the post, etc., for personal reasons. I said, no, I can't write this because, number one, all CSP officers are banned from taking leave. We're just not allowed to because there's a national emergency. So I'm not going to break that law and try to get leave and try to get a favor. I'm not doing this. So he said, right, when we began to argue, he was a good friend, so he was trying to show me. He said, look, I know how these officers, and he was from the Punjab, and he said, I know how the Punjabi officers think. I said, look, elections have happened. The Awami League is one. Government has to transfer power, and that's that. There's no other way out of it. He said, no, you don't know how we think. He said, this is the time they will never hand over power. So I said, then it's madness, there'll be violence. He said, that's exactly what I'm saying. You've got to get out. And in the end, Omar, I was able to escape from for all kinds of reasons. I came to West Pakistan. I was in Karachi. And again, the timing worked out that I was in Karachi and I got my orders for posting to Peshawar as deputy secretary. And therefore, I escaped the denouement. But he didn't. He was up in Hilly, up in the north of what was in East Pakistan and now Bangladesh. And he was involved in an encounter. Again, it was one of those military encounters you read about where he was surrounded by an Indian regiment, a cavalry unit, and Sabir was an infantry officer. He had his infantry battalion with him, and the Indian said, "Look, we've surrounded you. We've got tanks. You can't fight foot soldiers against tanks. So surrender, or you'll all be killed." And he said, "No, I'll never surrender." And he didn't surrender, and he was killed with the people who were with him. So it was one of these ironies of fate. And again, I saw the bloodshed, the violence, the senseless violence. Friends on both sides, Bengalis, non-Bengalis. It made no sense to me at all because if man was so irrational, it would lead to this kind of violence. So both in 47 and 71, I had very close encounters with a lot of the irrational impulses in our species. And the fact that we just don't seem to learn from these huge tragedies that we know of in history.
Indeed, sir. And thank you once again for sharing it with us. 47 was bad enough, but then having to relive some part of it again in 71, I really honestly cannot imagine. I just get goosebumps just listening to your recollection of both these events. But you did mention, sir, that you had also commemorated, I'm not sure if that would be the right word, or memorialized the events of 71 via a poem. And with your permission, we would love to have you read it out to us for the sake of our viewers and listeners.
Omar, that was I'm not a professional poet. I'm what in Urdu is called a partition poet, which means you're just an amateur. You write for your own pleasure, if that's the word. So I went through that experience in 71. Again, it was deep in my subconscious. And I did think about it, talk about it, because now I'm in Peshawar. Mm-hmm. And one of the young men who came to stay with me was the younger brother of the chief secretary of Bengal, Shafiul Zaman, a very famous man. He was locked up in Varsak in one of the camps. He was like a prisoner. So this young man came in, no one would talk to him. He was like an outcast. This straight after 71. People weren't talking to Bengalis. They were abusing us and saying, you're bingo lovers. They would call them bingo. And bingo, as you know, it was a bad term. It was like the N word here in America. And my wife and I were called bingo lovers. So this young man turned up and he didn't know where to go. He said, I don't know where to go, how I want to meet my brother. He's here. So I told him, you'll stay with me and I'll arrange everything. So I would arrange for him to go there and come back. And when Shafiur Zaman came out of that Warsak camp after some time, the first person he called on, he came to our house to show us honor and to show us gratitude. So I was very touched by that. And again, that transcends the divisions in human society. But it was at that time when this pent-up emotion of having gone through 71, because really for me, 71 meant it was the end of, in a sense, in a very dramatic, theoretical, hypothetical sense, the end of a dream called Pakistan. And whatever would remain, it would be a new kind of Pakistan, not the old Pakistan. And I knew that the Bengalis had been in the forefront of this movement. They had passionately invested in it and committed to it. And that, in a sense, West Pakistan had treated them shabbily and disgracefully and forced them into this situation. I know this because I was in the field in Kishorganj, Maniganj. And in the end, then began to use force, military force, to kill them and butcher them. And you can't do that. You can't have an army being used to kill your civilians and then expect them to love you. It just doesn't happen in history.
Absolutely.
So this poem then was bottled up in me. And literally, I woke up, I think, at 2 or 3 in the morning. And I asked my wife, who's always been a great supporter, but I'm sure she's quite fed up of this literary side of mine. And I said, give me a pen and paper quick. And literally, Umar, this poured out in one go. It wasn't written with any polishing and tweaking as poets often do. It just came out in one go. And that's the poem that I sent you because it's very raw and it has raw emotion. And Umar, I'd like you to read it if you don't mind, please.
Oh, of course, sir. Okay, so here we go. Sullen shine the stars, the moon in agony aloof. So still stand the palm trees, the seasons are bearing my dreams away. Sanity suspended while all the black horrors of the mind uncoil slowly, snakily, settle over this land. They came by night, they came in shame, they came to take the weapon and the woman. My throat was dry and chilled my groin, for they are taking them away to the slaughterhouses. Have you ever seen a child's head crushed like a coconut, or a proud man cry like a baby? Woman, like broken toys on the rail tracks to Santahar Junction. Bright flags fluttering from their thighs. Does it now matter which side did this or why? They were playing these games with death, over there in the green lands of Bengal, in the year of the Lord 1971. Oh, the storm that raged under the blue Bengal sky, within man and without him, when rape was relief, death a desire, and killing a madness. Mama, hide me in your arms, for they are taking them away to the slaughterhouses. Incest in the air, foul vapors in every mouth. Will nobody care to break this awful spell? The major swore he saw rows of what looked like round loaves of brown bread in the government college dining hall. These were sliced off, my sisters, while they writhed alive in the dormitories above. I'm curled, cursed, and cold alone in the night's chill womb, for they are taking them away to the slaughterhouses. Can all the waters of the bay, all the tears of the Orient, wash the red stains and ugly scars of hate inflicted in that single moment of suicide, compelled by an irresistible lust for self-destruction? When a house is empty, the family missing, and silence a way of life, the nights get chilly, the nights get lonely, and in the night, strong men break down to cry, for they are taking them away to the slaughterhouses. When Biharsi fate was sealed, and Bengali destiny designed, when the scythe was an argument and the bullet an answer, the lords of men, gods of pain, have taken counsel. The unholy juggernaut will move, it is decreed, and none to challenge it, What compulsions drive such men? What fear makes them such savages, while reason so thin on the breast deserts so quickly? Who was martyr, which one saint, depended only on the language he spoke. To such a fine point is the concept of alienation reduced, for there is no shame like the shame of taking them away to the slaughterhouses. Wow, that is amazing. Sir, you wrote this in one go, and I just cannot tell you just how I'm shaking while reading this, because it is your truth and what you saw. And as an eyewitness to 1971, I thank you once again, sir, for sharing this.
Thank you, Umar. Thank you for
audience.
sharing this with your viewers, because as you appreciate, it's a red hot and therefore as honest a feeling from deep inside me as possible. And some of these lines, when I look back now, they're very emotional for me. When a house is empty, the family missing, and silence a way of life, the nights get chilly, the nights get lonely, and in the night, strong men break down to cry, for they are taking them away to the slaughterhouse. Because that is what was happening, you see, and it was like a breakdown of everything around. And remember, I'm a young assistant commissioner who's very proud to have be part of this service with the belief that we are there to serve people, the civil service of Pakistan. Obviously, it was failing. It has diminished from an ideal. But this is what drove us, at least a lot of people who thought like me, that we were there to do our best and best service. So what we were seeing was a breakdown in everything we believed, and we just couldn't hold it or control it. And the tragedy was, Omar, that when some of us who survived went back to Pakistan, we went to Islamabad and met these very senior civil servants, very, very senior central secretaries. They literally dismissed us. They said, "You're talking nonsense." Literally, they say, "You're talking nonsense." We said, "Sir, there's a full-fledged civil war. You cannot control it through guns. You can't kill people. You can't kill everyone." In some senses, same argument is taking place in the Middle East right now, in Ukraine right now. And they just got angry with us. They said, "How dare you talk like this? You're young people, you'll ruin your careers. Don't go around spreading nonsense like this." Because that's bureaucracy, you see, with blinkered eyes. Except, Umar, and for your record, I must put this on record, except for two men I was very privileged to know and who liked me enough to give me access. One was Yaqub, General Yaqub. So as I landed in Karachi, I went straight to his house. And as I entered his drawing room, he wasn't meeting anyone. He was sort of under a cloud, and there were rumors he may be tried in Pakistan because they said the Pakistan government had ordered him to use force and fire, and he did not obey those rules. And as I walked into his drawing room, he said, "Akbar, this is how he's a very intellectual man." First point he made, "Akbar, how long do we have?" That's all he asked. And I said, "6 months, sir." And he sat down as if I had punched him in the stomach. And he said, "6 months, explain it to me." So I said, "Sir, you are fighting because your soldiers are very good soldiers, excellent soldiers, but they're trained for the plains of the Punjab. It's infantry. You go in with your infantry, then the tanks come. Then they are fighting a civil war. It's a war that's a guerrilla war. A guerrilla war means that people who are serving you dinner or arranging for your water may be poisoning it. The entire population is now involved. So it's not just regiments out in the field. It's going to be a kind of war that you have no idea how to check or control, because without talking, without dialogue, without compromise, this is going to end in disaster." I said, "This is my assessment." Then I went up to Islamabad. The second man, one again for history, I'm pointing this out, was President Ayub Khan. By then he had retired. He was under a cloud because Bhutto was Prime Minister, and there were all kinds of rumors about Ayub Khan himself that they may try him, do something to him, etc. But he was left alone. So he always was very kind to me because I knew the family. So he came down and we talked. We talked for about an hour. And he said, "You cannot fight on both fronts. You can't have a war going on with India hostile and maybe invading East Pakistan." There's 71, remember? And then you have a civil population fighting you. So it's two fronts. You just cannot do this. So he was very gloomy and he said there's no way to deal with East Pakistan, because he had a historic appreciation of East Pakistan. So apart from these two, Omar, I saw that the feeling was very hostile, very blinkered, very closed ideas, and people would shout at me over dinner and say, "This is in Islamabad," and they say, "You don't know what one cavalry regiment can do. It can go from one side of Bengal to the other side, etc., etc." And that's when people started calling my wife and me bingo lovers because they say you're just um, foolishly arguing for the Bengalis. And they would say all sorts of very stupid and very racist things. Bengalis are cowards, they can't stand up, we'll wipe them out, one regiment is enough, etc. And I would feel that it was futile because you cannot argue with ignorant people. If you don't know, and you're that ignorant that you're actually making statements like this, which are racist and which are ignorant of history and culture and the tradition of military warfare, then there is no point in arguing because in the end, you just annoy these people and they begin to abuse you. So we went through a lot of trauma, and that's where this poem came out. You see, at the end of it all.
Absolutely. And I can say, sir, with that one action of yours, I think you've won a lot of millions of fans back home in Bangladesh. And as a Bangladeshi, I tip my hat to you, sir, for your courage, for standing up to the powers that be, and all that was going on at the time. And in fact, your actions do remind me of one more thing, sir, and that is, it reminds me of the Quranic verse which says, "Bear witness to the truth, even if it be against yourselves." And that is exactly what you've done. So once again, sir, I thank you on behalf of all of us in Bangladesh.
Thank you. It was a difficult time.
Indeed.
And what kept me going on was my faith, because I tell you this, you're a young Bengali from that part of the world, some of the finest people I met, literate, warm, affectionate, passionate for Pakistan, were Bengalis in 71. But when Pakistan started shooting at them and killing them, they asked me, President Ayub Khan asked me, I said, "Sir, till March, I would say if there was a poll, 90% would have still voted for Pakistan. You deprived them of jobs. You humiliated them the way you treated Bengalis. It was unforgivable, unacceptable. And yet they voted for Pakistan. But after March, you're shooting them, you're killing them. How do you expect them to vote for you? It's not logical, it's not sensible." So that was my experience of Bengal. Very fine, very warm people, and very literate. What really impressed me was how intelligent they were. I had civil servants, colleagues. One of them was called Shelley. He used to write poetry. I don't know whether he's still in the service or not, but they were very much into literature, into writing, into producing, and having debates and discussions.
Indeed.
So,
absolutely. And I can completely understand just what an emotional time it was for you personally, sir, for having lived through it. And once again, I really cannot thank you enough for sharing this with our audience.
Well, thank you, Umar, and I hope I'm not sharing too much of my personal story, because Bengal does bring out a very emotional side of mine, because I feel it was such a, it was well-deserved independence, but very tragic from my side, because they were two brothers. They split up in this very tragic way, and I hope they are much closer together, because I know in their hearts they have a great deal of affection for each other.
Indeed, sir. And thank you once again. At this point in time, I think that I have pretty much exhausted all of my questions for the episode. But before I let you go, sir, I do have some surprise guest questions which I would like to ask you with your permission. And so the first surprise guest question that we have is from somebody whom you know very well and you're well acquainted with. He is Dr. Mike Gauss, the director of the Center for Pluralism.
Yes.
And the author of the book American Muslim Agenda. Mike Gauss is also a friend of the show, and we've also recorded an episode with him. And his question to you, sir, is, Dear Dr. Ahmed, you've written so many books over the years, including this latest one. What is the one thing that you wish or hope to accomplish through the writing of all your books?
Mike, my friend, first of all, let me salute you. Mike has been a champion of interfaith dialogue. He's been consistently standing up, speaking, and very boldly at times. People don't appreciate this, but very boldly. And I've seen him through the last several decades. So I really admire the work he's doing. The one wish that I would have, Mike, is the one you would have, which is we pray that people read our books. Our job is to write them. We hope and pray that people read them and pick them. And that's all we want. We don't write bestsellers. There's no scandal or sex or anything in these books. They're academic books, so they're cut and dried. But we hope people will read them and learn from them and enable their lives to be improved.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And more power to you, sir, and to Dr. Mike Gauss. I know that you guys are extremely good friends, and we're so lucky to have both of you on the show at this point in time. And so the second guest question that I have, Dr. Ahmed, is also somebody that you are acquainted with. And his name is Barrister Yasser Latif Hamdani. He's the author of the book Jinnah, a Life. And his question to you is, Dear Dr. Ahmed, do you feel that the Islamic world would have benefited had Al-Ghazali not arrived on the scene and gone after the philosophers of the Golden Age? Or is that a gross simplification of the history of ideas?
Yasser Hamdani is another iconic figure. I have great respect for him and his battle to preserve the legacy of Mr. Jinnah. I admire him for that, and I wish him well. And I don't know where he is these days, by the way. Please convey my regards to him and say, don't forget your old friends. As far as Al-Ghazali is concerned, I think Hamdani, like a lot of people, is misreading Ghazali. I would urge him to go back to Al-Ghazali, and if not Al-Ghazali himself, read the lectures or listen to the lectures of Hamza Yusuf on Al-Ghazali. And I think he'll have a better understanding and a better appreciation. But Ghazali has been very much distorted.
Okay, absolutely. So we shall definitely have Yasser Latif Hamdani convey that message to him, and I'm sure that he'll be watching this video once it comes out. And so the third and final guest question that we have, Dr. Akbar, this comes from Aisha Sarwari. She's also another Pakistani author, and she wrote her memoirs, Heart Tantrums. And this is a question which I'm also very curious to know your answer to. And her question is, Dear Dr. Ahmed, would you ever consider doing a remake of your 1998 film Jinnah in light of the new books that have come out on him?
Great question, great question. And the correct answer, Umar, is yes. I would want to, because I would want to add more nuance. I would want to add more ambiguity. And I would want to raise this whole debate of the route taken, the road less traveled taken, what if of history. The film that we made was very linear in its storyline. It was more deterministic than I would have wanted to, but that's how it turned out. And if I ever were to remake it, although I had a terrible time because it's not easy making a film, then making a film on Quaid-e-Azam in Pakistan is almost an impossible exercise because the whole nation is involved. Everyone wants to say in it. And everyone feels they have the right to make a comment. And if you don't agree, they're going to attack you and want to kill you. So I would want to, but with these different attitudes to formulating the script and the approach to Jinnah.
I'd like to stay a little bit with the 1998 film Jinnah, sir, which you have produced, co-wrote. And as all of us who have seen the film know that Sir Christopher Lee, who is very well known to younger audiences as the person who played the role of Saruman in the Lord of the Rings trilogy, as well as Count Dooku in the Star Wars prequel trilogy, Sir Christopher went on record as saying that his portrayal of Jinnah was probably the single most important thing he has ever done in his entire film career. So did you have a chance to actually see him up close while he was going through, his portrayal of Jinnah, sir? And what was it like working with him? Do please share your experiences
Very
with us.
much, Omar, because every evening after the shoot, we were staying in this hotel in Karachi. He'd come round to my room and we'd have long chats and he'd make comments on the shoot and so on. And we had many debates about how he would portray Jinnah. For example, let me give you a proper example for the interest of your viewers. How did Mr. Jinnah speak? Now, some people were saying he should speak like Gandhi and have that Peter Sellers kind of accent. And I said, no, he'll speak like an Englishman, because Jinnah took a lot of pride in saying that if you dress like an Englishman or speak like an Englishman, that is the only way that the Englishman will respect you. Otherwise, they'll look down on you. Now, this may be correct, this may not be correct, but Jinnah had a very clear idea of it. So Mr. S.S. Pirzada was a friend of mine, and he was helping me and supporting me and an advisor to the film. So I requested Pirzada Saab to come to the hotel, and the two of us went to Lee's room and we talked. And I said, Christopher, now listen to what Mr. Pirzada, who worked with Mr. Jinnah, he was the assistant to Qaid-e-Azam, what he has to say. And Pirzada Saab said, no, he spoke just like an Englishman. And you must stick to that, speak like that, and dress like an Englishman, because that is what Mr. Jinnah would want. So just give you one small example. We became great friends in the end. Omar, I really respected him. He told me many times, he said, just like Mr. Jinnah made Pakistan, I am going to make sure that this film is completed. We had all sorts of problems, but Christopher Lee throughout was adamant, and he stuck to his desire to make the film. And if you read his autobiography called Tall, Fair, and Gruesome, he had a sense of humor. In the end, he has an epilogue in which he's very kind. He thanks everyone who made the Jinnah film, and he gives me as the first name on that list, and thanks me very warmly. So we remained friends right up to the end. And he told me that he was going through a second career. He had become a musician, and he had a pop band, and he had a new batch, a new galaxy of admirers, not the old admirers from his films like Dracula and so on, and even Jinnah, but new ones because of his trilogy with Star Wars and Lord of the Rings and so on. So this was something entirely different. I had told him when we were filming, we were going through a tough time. I said, look, Christopher, just rough it out, because once it's all over, I can assure you that if you're ever in a taxi in England, where there are many Pakistani taxi drivers, I can promise you that they will never make you pay for the ride. And this was right. He'd say this. He said every time I got into a taxi, the fellow would look up in the mirror and say, you're not Mr. Christopher Lee, are you? And then they would be big fans of his.
Fascinating. And when you do decide, if and when you do decide to do a remake of the film, sir, I'm sure that finding somebody to fill Christopher Lee's shoes is going to be a daunting task.
Yes,
but just out of curiosity, do you have an actor in mind who could play the part of Mr. Jinnah?
Well, Omar, when we were selecting Jinnah, we went through a long list of people, the director and people who were involved in trying to cast Mr. Jinnah. I wrote to Jeremy Irons, for example. Personally, I corresponded with him because we were considering him. He had that look. I think he would have made a very good Jinnah. So someone like that. But remember now, there's a new generation now that all this happened. You're talking about the 1990s. So there's a whole generation. And theoretically, I think we can get someone who's a popular actor, because I was very keen on this when I was making this film in the 90s, when I conceived it and came up with the idea. So I said, I want someone who is an internationally known actor. And I was under a lot of pressure. People said, take this actor from Lahore and this actor from Karachi. I said, they're great actors, and Pakistanis are really good. You saw the actor at the end of the film. He's one of Pakistan's very well-known actors. Short performance, short role, but did very well. But I said, no, if this film has to be an international film, we must have an internationally known actor. And that's why we were going for it. But then the problem was, if you have an international actor, you've got Jinnah, you've got all these superstars, then we needed a local director who must be at least Pakistani. That's why I opted for a Pakistani director. And I think the next time I make a film, I won't go in for these personal preferences, but actually go in for someone who's technically and an expert on their own merit.
Indeed. And just another tangential question, Professor, and I don't know if it's a relevant one or not, but you also mentioned the 1982 film Gandhi, where Ben Kingsley was portraying Mr. Gandhi. And in my experience, the Western world seems to be a lot more familiar with Mr. Gandhi than with Mr. Jinnah. But would you happen to have an explanation as to why that is? I mean, is it because Mr. Gandhi was seen as the pacifist, whereas Mr. Jinnah was perhaps seen more as the firebrand? Could this be one of the reasons, for example?
No, Omar, is more complex than that. And it's a great question, because I'm constantly asking this and I'm having to face it. See, for example, let me give you a live example as a sociologist. I have a new batch of students coming every term. So about 30 students. And these are coming fresh from high school. They know very little of the world outside. American education is great, but they're not very much concerned with the outside world. So one of the questions when we were chatting, I say, all right, how many of you have heard of Mahatma Gandhi? Anyone who's heard of him, put their hands up. And almost the entire class puts up their hand.
Right.
Then I say, how many have heard of Mr. Jinnah? And except for maybe a Pakistani origin student, maybe an Indian origin student, no one will put their hands up. And I was so shocked because in this last session, I asked my class, I said, how many of you have heard of Benazir Bhutto? And no one had heard of her. No one.
Wow.
So you see, just the act of teaching, just the act of communication, just the act of sharing information for us becomes an act of passion. Because if we don't do it, Omar, this is not going to communicate. This won't spread. So I think it is an act. It has its own reward. And if you want to pursue this career, it's very important. I think I would urge all people from the Muslim world, right from Morocco to Central Asia to Bengal to Bangladesh, to act as ambassadors for that world and promote culture, ideas, knowledge of their own world to the rest of the world. And that way you'll be able to engage with Islamophobia, make friends, and hopefully close the gap between Muslims and non-Muslims.
Okay. And I think that's a really wonderful point to end this episode, sir. But because we are a podcast about books, I would be doing our viewers and listeners a disservice if I didn't ask you just two of our staple questions. And I promise to let you go after that. And so the first staple question that we have, Dr. Akbar Ahmed, is, are you more of a fiction person or a non-fiction person? What genre of books do you enjoy reading?
I enjoy reading both, but because I'm very much absorbed in writing about Islam and thinking about Islam, I read a lot of books which are non-fiction. So I love reading, especially history books on history, especially about the golden age of Islam.
And if anybody wanted to improve their knowledge of the golden age of Islam, sir, are there any books apart from your one that you would recommend as recommended reading? So
certainly the books I would say, for example, I've just mentioned for Mr. Hamdani is to read Hamza Yusuf. He's written extensively on this. Then there's Sheikh Tim Winter in Cambridge, who's also a convert to Islam and doing a great job. So there's a lot of literature available.
And from your own collection of books, sir, you've written extensively for so many years. If you could pick your top 3 books, what would be your pick from your own collection?
Again, a difficult question. But Umar, I wrote a book on Jinnah, Pakistan and Islamic identity. And that book was one of the 4 projects on Quaid-e-Azam. I call it the Jinnah Quartet. So there was the feature film. There was a documentary which was based on people who were contemporaries of Jinnah or knew him personally. Rare footage, great footage for scholars and historians. Then there was this book I'm mentioning, and then there was a graphic novel. So 4 different books for 4 different projects for different sections of society. So that would be one. Another book I would recommend is my book called Journey into America, which is based on a 1-year sabbatical, which I took and traveled with my group of assistants and students for 1 year, up and down all over America, north, south, east, west. We visited 100 mosques and interviewed African American imams and Asian imams and Arab imams, etc. And the third book I'd recommend is Journey into Europe. And again, I traveled with my team, north, south, east, west. We went to the westernmost part of Europe, easternmost part, and interviewed the chief rabbis and the grand muftis of Bosnia and the Archbishop of Canterbury and ordinary scholars and students. So it's very rich with ethnography. And it's there now, as a scholar, I can say with some element of satisfaction that I've done my job now in the field, produced this, and keeping in mind the great scholars of the golden age of Islam. I've been ruthlessly rigorous with my facts. So if I've given any facts, it's based in interviews. I've given the reference, I've given the source. And I can then sit back and say, Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. And on that note, sir, I think that this is a wonderful point on which to close this episode. So for our viewers and listeners who have been with us all this time, thank you so much for staying till the end. Professor, Sheikh Hamza Yusuf called you a Muslim treasure, and I cannot disagree with that because you are a living
Too
treasure
kind.
for all of us who are inspired by your books and your films and your poems and everything that you do, sir.
Thank you so much for um, allowing me so much time and talking to you. And please convey my love and affection to all our friends and colleagues and wonderful people back home in Bangladesh.